Good morning, members. It is the appointed time and the quorum is present. I call to order the meeting. Item 1 on the agenda, information papers issued since the last meeting. Members, since the previous regular meeting on the 4th of July, 4 information papers have been issued under this panel, the details of which were set out on item 1 on the agenda. Item 2, date and items for discussion at the next meeting. At the special meeting in September, I have notified members that the regular meeting in November will be held on the 28th of November. The items for discussions have been proposed by the administration. A, latest progress on maritime legislation. Please refer to item 1 on the outstanding items for discussion. And B, implementation of the trade descriptions ordinance. That is item 2 on the list of outstanding items for discussion. Members, do you have any views on the proposed items for discussion? If not, we shall endorse the agenda. Item 3, policy address, a briefing by the Secretary for Commerce and Economic Development on the Chief Executive's 2022 policy address, that is paper CB brackets 4890, 2022 brackets 03. Will the administration please join us? And those of you who would like to speak, please press the button. So please do not mix Cantonese and English when you speak. May I welcome the Secretary for Commerce and Economic Development and his team to join us. Has the system been switched on yet? Yes, you may now press the button. May I first invite Mr. Elgin Yao to brief us on the policy address and measures on commerce and economic development. Good morning, Chairman and members. In his policy address, the Chief Executive has stressed the importance of continuous growth of development impetus. This term of government attaches key importance to attracting enterprises and investments to drive economic development. That's why I would like to brief members on this panel on the CEDB's key work on attracting enterprises and investments. In accordance with the new measures announced under the PA, I and my team will actively take forward a series of work to encourage foreign investments and keep growing Hong Kong's development impetus. The CEDB's key tasks in this regard include the establishment of the Office for Attracting Strategic Enterprises, that is OASIS, and also the Advisory Committee on Attracting Strategic Enterprises. And also supervising the overseas ETOs to establish the dedicated teams for attracting business and talents. The new OASIS will be led by the Financial Secretary for attracting high potential and representative strategic enterprises from around the globe, particularly those from industries of strategic importance such as life and health technology, artificial intelligence and data science, financial technology, and advanced manufacturing and new energy technology. The CEDB is working together with the Office of the Financial Secretary on establishing the specific tasks for the OASIS, including devising a list of targeted enterprises and guiding the dedicated teams to take initiative to reach out to these enterprises, and also devise targeted and attractive special facilitation measures, including land, taxation, and finances, as well as making tailor-made plans to facilitate the establishment of these enterprises in Hong Kong. And also one-stop supporting services will be offered to the employees of these enterprises, including visa facilitation and education for their children. The Advisory Council for Attracting Strategic Enterprises will also be established for taking on board the views of the society and community leaders on the overall strategy to attract key businesses. They will be responsible for advising the FS on the strategy so that the governments understand the development and demand for strategic enterprises around the world better. To dovetail the work of the OASIS, the government will extend the functions of our mainland offices and our overseas ETOs. The dedicated teams for attracting businesses and talents will be set up within the year. The works include proactively reaching out to targeted enterprises and dovetail the work of the OASIS to gather information on these targeted enterprises for the OASIS reference, and also entering into negotiation with the target enterprises to offer them appropriate information assistance and to align them with the facilitation measures offered by the OASIS, and to tell the good stories of Hong Kong to promote our opportunities and advantages and promote our plans to attract quality enterprises into Hong Kong. We believe that the measures announced under the policy address are very attractive. It will facilitate key enterprises to expedite their establishment and investment in Hong Kong, to seize our opportunities and open up new markets. And through introduction of the investments from key enterprises, we will bring in new capitals and technologies to Hong Kong, and this is a win-win situation. To attract these businesses to Hong Kong, the Invest Hong Kong and mainland offices and ETOs, as well as overseas consultants, will take forward a proactive and forward-looking strategy to enhance our publicity work in the world, to facilitate mainland and overseas enterprises to come set up their presence in Hong Kong. That's all for my presentation. Thank you. According to ROP 83A, if members have any direct or indirect pecuniary interest on the discussion today, please disclose the nature of such interest before you speak. Now we have 13 members who have pressed the button. Because of time, I can only allow a maximum of 3 minutes to each member. I will have to draw a line now because the scheduled time is only half an hour for this item. So please finish your question within 1.5 minutes. Mr. Michael Tian. Thank you, Chair. The 14th National 5-Year Plan gives Hong Kong the position as an innovation center. A lot of talents will be attracted to Hong Kong for the development of new technologies. We are an inalienable part of the country. Now, the patents applied for in Hong Kong will be protected in the mainland and vice versa. To integrate into the GBA development, collaboration in terms of intellectual property is the key. The PA also mentions developing Hong Kong into a regional IP trading center, and also by 2023, pilot projects would be established together with the IP authority in the mainland, so that patents applied for in Hong Kong will receive a priority assessment. Well, but it is just a scratching. It is only scratching the surface. I believe that we should set up a mutual recognition system in terms of IP on both places. Are you encountering any particular difficulties? Of course, I hope that you are already discussion is already underway. Well, the policy address mentions the bill. The goal to pass the bill to amend the copyright laws, and also introducing the Madrid Protocol into Hong Kong, and also we want to waive the need for application for duplicated application for intellectual property on the mainland, so as to advance our strength as an IP trading hub. And also we will enhance training up our own officers as IP examiners. These are all measures to bolster our position as a regional IP trading hub. So our plan is by year 2030, these goals will be achieved. We will not rule out further high-level collaboration with the IP authority of the country to facilitate the pace. So do you mean that there will be mutual recognition for trademarks and IP? That's my question. I'm asking why is there a lack of such a mutual recognition system? Well, I will defer the question to my team. So that should be the purview of the CI panel. So we don't have the commissioner for the IP authority. So it is not as simple as that because the international community may not recognize our mutual recognition system. So we are working on our own IP examination system and also facilitating expeditious examination of Hong Kong's IP in the country. So why is there no mutual recognition? Well, because it is geographical in nature. Well, Hong Kong is part of China, so Hong Kong is so there is no geographical issue. There should be a mutual recognition system. So I can only say that at this moment it is not feasible. So next week at the meeting of the CI panel, maybe we can further discuss this problem because this is not the right panel for this issue. Next, Mr. Sunny Tang. Thank you, Chair. I am grateful that the CE in the PA has taken on board the suggestions made by the BPA and the industry to speed up reindustrialization in Hong Kong and also enhancing the regime. I also think that the Oasis and the dedicated teams for attracting businesses and talents are a good start. Many industry partners say that they are eager to chip in. So I hope on strategic measures, for example, taxation, discounts, and other incentivization measures, you can ask for help from the stakeholders to help promote your campaign. For example, we have entrusted the Big Four to ask their clients on how they can help to compete for talents. Now, for leading enterprises in the mainland, for example, Anta and Li-Ning, we can facilitate them to establish research and development centers in Hong Kong or give them tax incentives to set up RHQ, that is a regional headquarters in Hong Kong, to enhance our ecosystem. Secretary, thank you, Mr. Chan, for your questions on the establishment of the Oasis. Together with the Office of the Financial Secretary, and we will establish Oasis within the year and set up and create a list of targeted enterprises. And also, we will make tailor-made packages for different enterprises. They have different needs, for example, taxation, facilitation measures, or land availability. So there is the joint investment fund or co-investment fund amounting to $30 billion. So we will ask the enterprises for their actual needs and their future plan of development and give them a tailor-made plan. Of course, there will also be a general incentive measures for them. So within the year, together with the Office of the FS, we will complete the hardware setup for the Oasis, and by year 2023, our mainland offices and ETOs will align themselves with the key enterprises to attract them to Hong Kong.
Next, Ms. Carmen Khan. Thank you, Chair. We should step up or enhance the functions of the economic trade offices in the mainland and overseas. As the paper says, at the 17 ETOs, there will be dedicated teams to attract enterprises and talent. Can the Bureau tell us, will this team be set up at every single ETO? Now, for these ETOs, they are a way for the local people to find out about Hong Kong. So my question for the government is that in terms of the recruitment of staff at these offices, how will you ensure that the staff there can tell good Hong Kong stories? And especially given the geopolitical factors at play, how can we get the enterprises to actually come to Hong Kong so that we can leverage our strengths? I thank Ms. Khan for her questions. As for the ETOs at the mainland and overseas, there are 17 such offices. They will set up the dedicated teams for attracting businesses and talents. For each ETO, they will be given resources to set up such dedicated teams. They will collaborate with the Office for Attracting Strategic Enterprises. They will share information. For these dedicated teams, they have to be aware of the developments in their respective locations. They have to share the information with us so that we can look into the information, and then we set our objectives. So we deploy our existing resources to make this happen. In the process, we will see which area requires more resources. In terms of telling good Hong Kong stories, this is an objective for the government. This applies for locally and overseas. Each government department has a duty to tell good Hong Kong stories. When it comes to our strengths, the support from our motherland and our connectivity with the world, we have to leverage these advantages. We have to tell people the real picture of Hong Kong so that people are aware of our advantages. Chair, I have a question about paragraph 7, about the 1,130 strategic enterprises. The target will be to bring in roughly 370 enterprises each year. How does that compare with what we had in the past? Is that according to the definition set by Invest Hong Kong? We want to find out what kind of strategic enterprises we're trying to bring to Hong Kong. Can we get more information? In paragraph 7, the target is to bring in 1,130 strategic enterprises. That objective is based on our figures from 2020 and 21. So that between 2023 and 25, we will bring in 1,130 enterprises. This goes beyond just the strategic enterprises. Now, Hong Kong will be an international trade center as well. For Invest Hong Kong, it looks at our previous performance and makes an assessment. We are also increasing the percentage of enterprises we're trying to bring in so that we will bring in more companies and create more jobs. I will now invite my colleague from Invest Hong Kong, the director, Mr. Stephen Phillips, to tell us more about this.
Thank you. So over the period with the 1,130, that's an increase of 16% over the last couple of years, where we saw a depression because of COVID globally. So we're looking to rebuild that pipeline as robustly as we can. I think the good news is what we're seeing is a lot of pent-up demand globally for investing in Hong Kong. So now we're working very hard to convert that interest into tangible investment. So I'm pretty optimistic that we'll begin to see those numbers pick up quite sharply.
Thank you. Next, Dr. Tan Yue Hung. Thank you, Chair. Just then, the Secretary said the government would step up efforts to bring in enterprises and talent. And the government will take steps to consolidate Hong Kong's position as the 8th center. So there will be this oasis to be set up. The office will provide facilitation measures and one-stop services for enterprises and talent. My question for Oasis is that what sort of facilitation services would that be and what kind of one-stop services? Can you tell us more about what these measures will be? Just then, Ms. Khan referred to the figures. In the next 3 years, we're trying to bring in 1,130 enterprises. The second figure, this is about $770 billion in investment. when you average things out, that's less than $100 million per company. Is that just an initial figure? Will there be additional investments as more companies come in? How did you arrive at the figure of $77 billion? Secretary, please. I thank Dr. Tan for his questions. Now, for the measures concerning Oasis, we will work with the Financial Secretary's office to set up the Oasis this year. Now, we don't have further specifics yet, but there will be tax concessions, measures concerning land and capital, etc. Now, we mentioned the $30 billion in the co-investment fund for the Hong Kong Investment Corporation. As for other support measures, when people come to Hong Kong, we will look into possible ways to provide one-stop services for visa applications and education for their children. Now, we have to wait till the office, that is the Oasis, is actually set up before we can go into the specifics. Now, for the 1,130 enterprises and the $77 billion in investment. Previously, we had small enterprises, micro enterprises that came to Hong Kong, and we take that as the basis for our assessment. We based our assessment on the past records from Invest Hong Kong and come to this level. I will invite Stephen to tell us more about this.
It's fair to say that historically the amount of capital invested really reflects the dominant nature of the services sector in Hong Kong. So investments classically haven't been highly capital intensive. They may create many jobs, but actually we haven't had the reindustrialization, we haven't had significant R&D operations. So my expectation would be, as we embed this work in the Hong Kong economy, that we'll see the average capital per project begin to rise quite significantly.
好，請林少路議員。
Next, Mr. Andrew Lam. Chair, I'm pleased to see that government will be trying to leverage the ETOs in the mainland and overseas to take forward such efforts. Our advantage lies in having the support of our motherland and being connected to the world. We want to bring in enterprises. We have to stress this point. When we talk about outside enterprises, we have to show them how we can help them enter the Greater Bay Area. And for mainland businesses, we have to show them how we can help them go global. In this regard, when we work through these ETOs, then what specific resources can we provide to these ETOs? Now, we have been saying how to bring businesses to Hong Kong for innovation and technology. But when we're saying connecting the Greater Bay Area and the rest of our country with the world, can you tell us more? Now, I thank Mr. Lam for his questions. Now, our feature lies and our strength lies in having our country's support and our connectivity with the rest of the world. Invest Hong Kong and the Hong Kong Trade Development Council have held activities in the mainland, online webinars, for example, and there have also been exhibitions. That's how we communicated with mainland companies. That's also a way to liaise between Hong Kong businesses and their mainland counterparts, so that mainland businesses can go global through Hong Kong. Now, we have signed 8 free trade agreements with other economies in the world, covering 20 economies across the globe. In these activities, we managed to get mainland companies to enter into trade partnerships with other economies. I will also invite Stephens to tell us the work of Invest Hong Kong in the mainland and how they help the mainland companies go global through Hong Kong.
Thank you. Perhaps firstly I can give some of the practical examples of how we help international companies look at the Greater Bay Area. We do have a dedicated team in Hong Kong that works with all of the teams in the ETOs around the world. And we also have a group with our counterparts in the other 10 cities of GBA. So there's a lot of very practical collaborative work going on. That includes events that we do in locations around the world together, both with Guangdong. We do a special series of events with Shenzhen. We've got a dedicated website with very in-depth resources, city by city, sector by sector. We published a practical guide, which we developed jointly with one of the big 4 accountancy firms to show international companies the roadmap on entering GBA. So there's activity happening all of the time, and all of our colleagues are equipping themselves with that knowledge. In terms of mainland enterprises, obviously there's an opportunity for them, those within GBA, to use Hong Kong as a stepping stone to the world, but it's a much bigger picture. The story with mainland enterprises, I think one of the members already touched on it, using Hong Kong for a regional headquarters or an R&D function. And then we look at connecting them with the international business community here in Hong Kong to find the partners that they might need, whether it's in ASEAN, the Middle East, in Central Asia, or elsewhere. Another very significant part of the work with mainland enterprises is capital raising. So we work very closely with the Hong Kong Stock Exchange and with the financial and professional services community. So depending upon the particular company, they'll have an initial focus.
好，請陳少雄議員。
Next, Mr. Chen Xiuhong. Just then, other members have already asked some questions. I won't go through them again. I have 2 questions, though. In paragraph 4 in the paper, it says that this year the government will set up the Oasis to bring in high potential and representative strategic enterprises like health and life science technology, artificial intelligence, data science, fintech, advanced manufacturing, energy technology, etc. These are strategic industries. But what would be the criteria for the government to select the high potential and representative strategic enterprises? Now, Hong Kong is competing for enterprises. The same goes for many places in the world. We're talking about a dynamic, competitive environment. Take Singapore or Australia as an example. They have their own measures to bring in, to lure in enterprises. They have more aggressive concessions and incentives. Now, what gives the government confidence that we're actually out-competing our rivals in terms of competing for enterprises? I thank Mr. Chen for his questions. Now, how do we bring in the high potential enterprises? We work with the Innovation, Technology and Industry Bureau. We're also working with the Financial Services and Treasury Bureau. We work together. We share our information. So we get a list of enterprises we may want to bring in. There will be an advisory committee on attracting strategic enterprises. At this committee, we will bring in people from the relevant industries, people experienced in the industries. These industry veterans will provide advice to this financial secretary. With this arrangement, we hope that we can bring in the strategic enterprises. Our ETOs overseas and in the mainland are also tasked with telling us about the developments regarding the key enterprises at their respective locations. That's how we can bring in the strategic enterprises. In different countries, they offer all sorts of concessions and incentives. We have to have regard to our own needs and our own circumstances. Now, we don't have to match every single incentive offered by other economies. We have to explore this matter further. There will be internal communications. And once Oasis is set up, we will try to arrange tailor-made measures for each strategic enterprise instead of having a one-size-fits-all concession for all enterprises. That's how we hope we can assure the enterprises that they should come to Hong Kong.
Dr. Wendy Hong Thank you, Chair. Secretary, competition between enterprises and enterprises and competition between products is actually competition between supply chains. Leading enterprises are in close liaison with the upstream, middle stream, and downstream suppliers. In selection of location for the base, one of the key considerations is whether they can coordinate the entire supply chain. If they are not able to coordinate at the end all the links of the supply chains in Hong Kong, it will affect their competition and their competitiveness, and they will not choose Hong Kong as their base. So when we are trying to attract leading enterprises to Hong Kong, would you consider facilitating the smooth operation of the entire supply chain so as to attract them? Just very briefly, Chair, for enterprises with vertical relationship along the supply chain, if there can be a greater integration between them, the efficiency can be enhanced. Now, with the CDB, consider providing more synergy and also economies of scale in terms of land use for upper and downstream operators. Thank you. We would take care of the various needs of enterprises. So you mentioned about supply chain. So we would, of course, make Hong Kong as a whole attractive to them. They would only choose Hong Kong as their base if they think Hong Kong can facilitate the operation. So we would definitely work with other bureaus to facilitate the migration of enterprises to Hong Kong. We need the support from other bureaus to help them set up their presence in Hong Kong. So this is a whole government effort. Through the Oasis, we want to step up enhance our attractiveness for these enterprises. So would you consider granting land for enterprises to establish their own supply chain? So what I mentioned include land, tax incentives, and facilitation of capital flow. So we would assess the individual needs of the enterprises and whether we are able to afford them the help to help them migrate to Hong Kong. Mr. Michael Look, Chair, many members are concerned how we can attract more foreign investments to Hong Kong. So the Oasis is a highlight. The paper mentions that between the year 2023 and 2025, the government hopes to introduce $77 billion of investments into Hong Kong and also create some 15,000 jobs and attracting more than some 1,130 enterprises to Hong Kong. So compared with previous years, including the past 2 years, before the Black Hat violence saga, that is 2019, how did the figures compare? So besides attracting businesses, we have to stop business from moving out. If we attract 1,000 enterprises to Hong Kong and then 1,000 companies, 1,010 companies leave, then there would be a net decrease. So how can we retain them? Can you give us the figures on the number of enterprises moving out from Hong Kong? And how can we encourage them to align with the 8 positions for Hong Kong promulgated under the 14th Five-Year Plan? In terms of global movement, some foreign media are strategically bad-mouthing Hong Kong. So are there any countermeasures? Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Look, for your questions. I would defer the question to Mr. Stephen Phillips for a comprehensive answer because he has the figures.
Certainly, when we're looking at the overall number of international mainland companies in Hong Kong, we're looking at both new and we're also looking at retaining companies. And a very important aspect of our work is actually what we call aftercare. So it's working with existing investors to either keep their business stable or to find new opportunities for them to grow their business. GBA is a very good example of a growth avenue. In our day-to-day work, we pretty much see the number of total companies as stable. The media reporting doesn't really reflect what me and my team are seeing in terms of the number of companies. But we work very hard at it. We've also, I think, seen throughout COVID a shift in sectors that are performing more strongly and those that have been more adversely impacted by COVID. But overall, I think businesses are stable now, and with the opening up, we'll be going back into growth mode.
好，下一位請副主席。
Next, the Deputy Chairman, Dr. Kennedy Wong. Thank you, Chair. Secretary, on the establishment of the dedicated team for attracting businesses and talents, I'm very excited about the idea. This is also what the BPA has been calling for. So there are some observations on my part. I have been to many ETOs overseas. Well, maybe a team made up by entirely civil servants is not sufficient to achieve your goals. So maybe you can consider working together with Hong Kong businessmen overseas, give them consultancy positions or other appropriate roles in the mainland offices and the ETOs to give play to their strengths. And also you should consider adopting technologies to support these offices in their work to attract businesses and talents. So you said different bureaus are involved, including the ITIB, your bureau, and so on, as well as the Invest Hong Kong. So there should be a high-tech platform for this effort. Thank you for your question. We are going to establish the dedicated team for attracting businesses and talents in our mainland offices and ETOs, thus expanding the functions of the offices. And we will maintain close relationship with local chambers of commerce and so on. Say, for example, when I took part in the meeting in Cambodia, I also met Hong Kong trade bodies in Cambodia, and they have provided us with a lot of suggestions and advice, which made the visit a success. In the future, we will communicate more with local and Hong Kong trade organizations to tell the good stories of Hong Kong. In terms of using technologies, big data is very important in terms of future development. The OASIS will explore further the way forward with other bureaus. Mr. Yim Kong. Thank you, Chair. Secretary, in the policy address, there are a lot of measures on consolidating our status as an international maritime center and an international aviation center, which is close to our position as the 8 centers, including the development of a smart port. Now, our Kwai Chung container terminal was designed 40 years ago. In terms of the water depth, automation, and also back office support, it is not sufficient to cater for the mega OGVs. Now, our port competitiveness has declined over the past few years. So will the Secretary consider studying the matter with other bureaus to further develop our container ports to meet the demand for the logistics industries of tomorrow. Now, also the HKAA mentioned its plan to make capital injection to the Zhuhai airport. So, what is the progress? If that happens, how can we coordinate our positions together with the Macau airport to give play to our complementary strengths? Secretary, thank you, Mr. Yim, for your question. On the position as an international maritime aviation hub, that was also my specialty. I'm very interested in enhancing our positions in this regard. However, this is not the purview of the CEDB. So I think in the last session, the Transport and Logistics Bureau will be able to give Mr. Yim Kong a complete answer. Thank you. Mr. Holden Chow. Thank you, Chair. So this PA puts a lot of focus on something that I have been calling for, that is reindustrialization. So I'm grateful for the CE to pay attention to developments on this regard. So in terms of attracting talents, there will be relaxation measures so that employers need not approve the insufficiency of talents to import labor. So that is a good measure. On talents for advanced manufacturing industry, as told by the stakeholders, it is not very easy to get approval from the governments to import talents from the field. So will the government start relaxing the requirements for importing talents from advanced manufacturing industry? So far, the 13 talent fields do not include advanced manufacturing industry. So would you consider adding the industry on the list? If we can do that, we can send out a clear message that we are introducing talents to help our reindustrialization efforts. Now, in terms of ASEAN, the Invest Hong Kong, the Trade Development Council, and the CDB, will you give more play to enhancing the relationship with ASEAN countries? On introducing talents, visas, and the talents list, the government has a complete set of measures to introduce talents from multiple disciplines. The Secretary for Labour and Welfare will be able to give members more details on how the government will introduce quality talents and the way forward. On the coordinated efforts between our overseas ATOs and the Invest Hong Kong and the Trade Development Council, well, they have different roles, and it may not be feasible to integrate them into a single window unit. It would be better if the three different units can do their job separately and fulfill their functions individually. With the stewardship of the OASIS, the three units can contribute to the efforts.
Mr. Robert Lee, the chief executive indicated in the policy address that we have to compete for businesses and tell good Hong Kong stories. And as Hong Kong is opening up, and as we're seeing, we have this FinTech Week, and then we will also have the Global Financial Leaders Summit. That will also be the Rugby Sevens. So my question for the CEDB is that the Bureau will work through Invest Hong Kong as well as the various ETOs to promote Hong Kong and tell good Hong Kong stories. Invest Hong Kong also covers finance, fintech, and something similar in its work. So in the days to come, what will be done to tell the outside world the work we do in Hong Kong in terms of finance, like hedge funds and financial services? In the days to come, what measures will there be to help us revive the economy? And for the financial services industry, what can the sector do? What sort of information does the government need from us to promote Hong Kong? I thank Mr. Lee for his questions. I will invite Stephen to elaborate on these points.
For the question, certainly financial services and very closely allied with it, fintech, are very high priorities for Invest Hong Kong. On those agendas, we work very closely with FSTB, HKMA, SFC, and the Insurance Authority. And as mentioned, actually, the FinTech Week just started this morning. The teams around the world, literally 24/7, are talking to segments of the financial services sector, both on a one-to-one basis and a series of events all the time. So we cover off, obviously, traditional banking, asset management and wealth management is a very high priority at the moment. As a subset of that, we have a dedicated team doing work around family offices. We do a lot of work around insurance, and then also on the fintech side, we've got a dedicated team looking at all of the key verticals within fintech. And we have a structured program for fintechs to help them set up and grow in Hong Kong. And we're extending that to GBA and also further afield into ASEAN. So that work continues. With FSTB, over the coming months, we're doing more than 60 events together around the world, focused on different aspects of financial services. I'm happy to share that list in due course.
好，請陳佩良議員。
係，多謝主席。嗰個
Mr. Chen Pui-leung. Now, when we say we want to bring in enterprises, we want to focus on the high-tech businesses like data science, biotech, etc. Now, we are seeing tense relations between China and the US and China and Europe. Given these tensions, there may be restrictions on these enterprises when it comes to investment. If we want to bring these companies to China or to Hong Kong, there may be difficulties in the process. Has the government anticipated or any difficulties, or what sort of difficulties does the government anticipate, and what will be done in response to such difficulties? I thank Mr. Chen for his questions. Oasis will be set up this year. And for a list of the enterprises we want to bring in, we're preparing the list. Now, Mr. Chen raised noteworthy point. We don't know yet as to whether geopolitics is preventing enterprises from coming to Hong Kong. We haven't approached those businesses yet, so we haven't come across any such case yet. Once Oasis is set up and it's up and running, we will try to work things out to offer solutions for these companies if they do run into difficulties. But we haven't formed any view as to the points raised by Mr. Chen just then. Now, 4 members would like to speak, but we have overrun. So let's stick to 1 question per member. Peter Shill, please. Thank you, Chair. I support these measures to bring in enterprises and talent. I know there are many ETOs overseas. More specifically, now these ETOs will have to launch promotion campaigns like seminars and conferences, so they will need more resources. How much will they cost when it comes to the extra support that you will grant each ETO? apart from bringing in overseas talent, we also have plenty of talent in Hong Kong. During the Black Clad violence, there was plenty of fake news. Now, society wasn't very stable. Many people left Hong Kong back then, but then recently on the internet, I've seen some people have realized what they saw was fake news. They had difficulty adjusting to life overseas. Would the government set up an office for talent trying to come back to Hong Kong? Wouldn't that make things easier? Secretary, please. Now, for ETOs overseas and in the mainland, now they will set up dedicated teams for attracting businesses and talent. They will make use of existing resources to make that happen. And when we have set up Oasis, we will see what else can be done. Not every ETO will require additional resources. And we will also have to look into which ETOs we should be focusing on. Now, as for Hong Kong talent returning to Hong Kong from overseas, now once you bring in an outside enterprise, new jobs are created. Some people who have moved overseas may wish to come back to take up those jobs. So we will see if there will be talent who wish to come back. So we will see how things go. Chair, just one more thing from me. To bring in outside businesses, the ETOs will need resources provided upfront so that they can formulate a plan when it comes to publicity and promotion. Next, Mr. Edmund Wong. Thank you, Chair. I wish to raise a similar point as Mr. Peter Shiu just did. Now, talent. The Chief Executive mentioned there will be 13 sectors to be looking at in terms of the kind of talent we want to bring in so that we can bring in the kind of the talent we need by Q1 2023. In the 13 sectors, some are closely related to accounting, compliance, asset management, ESG, environment, social and corporate governance, etc. Accountants or lawyers are involved. We have a shortage of accountants too. Speaking as a representative in the accountancy sector myself, my question for the government is, will there be measures to help people become accountants or lawyers so that they fulfill the criteria as talent? I thank the member for his questions. I believe the Labor and Welfare Bureau will be in a better position to respond to the questions. After all, his questions touched on bringing in talent. So the LWB will have more information to provide a relevant response. Next, Ms. Elizabeth Kwok. Chair, bringing in enterprises and talent matters a lot for Hong Kong because they will provide new impetus for our economic growth. Now, what do we mean by strategic enterprises when we look at mainland enterprises? There are state-owned enterprises and private enterprises on the mainland. They wish to go global, but they may not always pick Hong Kong. It depends on what we can offer these enterprises. Now, some leading mainland enterprises are considering where they should set up their regional headquarters for their international operations. They are aware of measures in Hong Kong to bring in enterprises, but they're not sure about the specifics. Like, is the arrangement some kind of arrangement by invitation? What's the roadmap? What's the timetable? Mainland enterprises want to get prepared, but there is no further update. So I want to find out more from you, from the government, that is. Will you provide a list, or do mainland enterprises have to approach us proactively? Are there deadlines for the mainland enterprises to prepare certain documents so that they can take things to the next step? Now, this year, we will set up the Oasis. We will also set objectives and formulate a list of enterprises to bring in. We will have an advisory committee. The members will provide advice to the financial secretary, so that early next year we can get started with the work. We don't have any further details yet, Once Oasis is in place and the directions and the list are in place, we will share the information with members. Next, Mr. Dennis Leung. Thank you, Chair. In the paper, something stands out. It's about Airport City. The government wants to build an airport city, but this measure was covered in the policy address last year. Why does this come up again? Is there just old wine in new skin? Did anything go wrong with the initiative? Now, our post services are based on our trading fund. The Hong Kong Post has been operating at a loss every year. Now, we have also included the real name registration for phone cards, SIM cards, with more resources, but the Hong Kong Post isn't hiring extra staff, so that leaves the Hong Kong Post officers very stressed. The services will not be commissioned until later. So in between, what will the government do about the parcels, the letters, to make Hong Kong more competitive as a logistics hub in the Greater Bay Area? Secretary, please. Now, when it comes to measures of the airport cities, I will leave this matter to the Transport and Logistics Bureau to give us a more detailed response in terms of the measures in the policy address. Now, as for Hong Kong Post, it has been operating at a loss for the past couple of years. This has to do with a sharp drop in the volume of mail. This is COVID related. The Hong Kong Post will put in more resources to build a new post office. We will have a new business plan for Hong Kong Post, apart from mail. And there will be more facilitation measures for cold chain management and to reduce workload for our workers. Many automation measures have been in place, so there will be more AI and more automation to reduce the stress for workers. We will have regard to the business needs to deploy a manpower with new thinking and a new business model. We will distribute the workload more evenly. And we will also deploy manpower having regard to the new business needs. So there will be more digitalization, more computerization. We will wrap up this session. I thank the CEDB and his team. Now we're moving on to the Secretary for Culture, Sports and Tourism. They will brief us on the relevant measures in the policy address. We will now invite the officials to enter the room. Members who wish to speak, please press the request to speak button now. Now we have overrun in the previous session. I will extend the meeting from 12:15 to 12:45. Any objection from members? No objection. So we will extend the meeting to 12:45 at most. Now welcome the Secretary for Commerce and Culture, Tourism and Sport.
Thank you, Chair. Our paper has set out the major measures mentioned on tourism mentioned under the PA. Our goal is to promote Hong Kong to become a prime tourism destination while driving the economy's growth and also creating job opportunities. We will also showcase our unique culture, geography, and history and lifestyle. Under the One Country, Two Systems principle, we will align with the National Tourism Development Plan and also in alignment with the development blueprint for Hong Kong's tourism industry announced in year 2017, which is in alignment with the National Plan. there are a number of measures and programs to play Hong Kong's strength as an international tourism hub, and the key shown in single journey and multiple stop principle. Now, over the past 2 years, the tourism industry has been hard hit. We understand the industry's operational difficulties. That's why we have made a commitment of more than $3.88 billion in alleviation. With the epidemic easing out, we have cancelled the on-arrival compulsory quarantine requirements and also the circuit breaker mechanism for flights and cruise trips. The cross-boundary travel is returning to normal gradually. Before the epidemic passes, we will continue to create more room for the industry to operate on the premises of anti-epidemic. Last week, on the 28th of October, we have announced the enhancements for the Green Lifestyle Local Tour incentive schemes, including offering a new round of quotas for travel agents and also increasing the incentivized amount. And also, the Tourism Bureau has announced that on the 20th of this month, the new round of Spend to Redeem Local Tour. The number of quota has been enhanced. Later on, the Staycation Delights will receive a new round to continue to boost the local consumption on hotels and F&B. Now, the Bureau's departments are closely monitoring the developments of the epidemic and actively considering further relaxation to promote the gradual resumption of cross-boundary travel. Now, we will continue to communicate with the industry. Having balanced the overall anti-epidemic needs, we will provide more facilitation measures for inbound travel groups and prepare for the relaunch of tourism. In fact, to prepare for the return of visitors under the epidemic, we have been enriching our tourism resources. The multiple arts and culture landmarks have been completed in the WKCD, and also the East Kowloon Cultural Center will be commissioned in phases starting next year. We will also formulate the development blueprints for arts and culture facilities for the next 10 years and increase the number of museums and performing venues. There will be different arts and culture tourism activities, including the Sai Kung Hoi Arts Festivals, which will be commenced next month. And also, starting next year, there will be the annual Pop Culture Festival co-host with the industry. And also, through the Mega Arts and Cultural Events Fund, we will attract and support more mega arts and culture events in Hong Kong. Now, on the 20th of this month, we have rolled out the Cultural and Heritage Sites Local Tour Incentive Scheme with a commitment of over $600 million to encourage the tourism industry to make full use of our rich cultural and heritage resources and the completion of major arts and culture facilities to develop more products. And also, the Trade Industry Council will organize dozens of training courses for tour guides and escorts. To facilitate our status as a city for international sports events, we will enhance the air marks system to support at least 10 international events to be conducted in Hong Kong. In terms of green tourism, we are enhancing the 20 famous and popular hiking trails and to provide tourists with a green and green tourism experience. And also major attractions like Hong Kong Disneyland Resorts and Hong Kong and the ocean parks and the peak trams are enhancing the facilities to make them more attractive for customers. For cruise tourism, we are working with the TDB, with the tourism board, to actively reach out to cruise ship companies to facilitate support to resume cruise to nowhere trips. And we are through the Tourism Industry Authority, we are offering a commitment of more than $60 million to train up tourism practitioners to enhance their quality. The Tourism Bureau has been preparing for the relaunching of cross-boundary travel with the relaxation of cross-boundary requirements. The next step will be to launch a global campaign to promote our tourism industry. And also, the Tourism Bureau has made plans so that when quarantine-free and medical surveillance-free cross-boundary travel resumes, the Council will support C&E tourism to cover C&E activities of different scales and types, and to attract a more high-value added overnight tourists to Hong Kong. Now, looking ahead, we will give play to the principle of shaping tourism with cultural activities and promoting culture through tourism to enhance our local resources and also play a role as the cornerstone of the single journey, multiple stops principle. Now, because of the time, please limit your question to one. Mr. Michael Tian. Thank you, Chair. 20 years ago, we have built the Disneyland Resort. After that, there has been no major new tourist attraction. We have been relying on our old stock. Now, I have been calling for the race course to be built in Sunny Bay for 4 to 5 years. Now, in Singapore, there has just been a racing event attracting more than 300,000 visitors. Now, the Sunny Bay racing course to be, which I propose, will be a lasting item. And after you have built it, you can simply put it on autopilot. You can receive return in terms of rents and profits. Unlike the Hong Kong Disneyland Resort, they have been losing money every year. So the Sunny Bay racing course should be a key task. We should work together with the Development Bureau so that there is enough flour to make the cake. Now, I think the Development Bureau has mentioned that they were open to this idea. So please follow up on the idea. But we cannot build a theme park there because a contract has been signed with the Disneyland Resort. So I hope in 10 years' time there will be a real attraction for foreign visitors. When we have the racing course with the support of the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge to Macau, where visitors can visit casinos, we will be in a better position to become an international tourism hub. Secretary. Well, in terms of the Disneyland resorts, they have been enriching the attractions over the past 20 years. So we have to be fair to the company. There are also upcoming attractions to be built as well. In terms of using racing events to attract tourists, we do support it. As a sport, well, it is also an attractive and popular sport. However, before we decide whether we should set aside land to promote a certain sport, we have to take a comprehensive consideration. Hong Kong's land resource is scarce. We have to take a holistic approach in determining the use of land. If we can attract major racing events to take place in Hong Kong, that's also our goal. Well, the Sunny Bay reclamation project is already on the move. So what better alternatives can you suggest rather than a racing course? Well, it depends on the land use. Ms. Elizabeth Quart. Thank you. Now with the Culture, Sports and Tourism Bureau, of course, we want to see organic integration between the three elements to create the maximum benefit. Now on esports is a sports event under the Asian Games, and also it is very popular among young people. So will the Secretary give more focus to develop esports in Hong Kong and also to host major international esports events in Hong Kong? For each event, tens of thousands of players and spectators will be attracted to the event. So it is very helpful in terms of building Hong Kong into a mega sports events metropolis, and it will also be very useful in terms of creating job opportunities for the young people. Given its popularity among young people, will the Bureau consider my suggestion? Well, there are two perspectives on esports. Today, we are mainly discussing the issue from the tourism perspective. Well, like racing events, if we can host major sporting events in Hong Kong, attracting players and spectators from around the globe, it is naturally beneficial to the development of our tourism industry. So we would fully support it. From the sports perspective, there are a lot of discussion on the position of esports, whether it is a sport or otherwise. However, this is a very popular activity among young people, and a lot of contribution can be made to the economy. Esports are closely related to technology. Or in the arts and culture industry, there are also a lot of interaction between gamings and technologies. So the government will consider the development of esports proactively, and we hope that it can also help boost our tourism industry. Chair, in Shanghai, the Shanghai government has been actively involved in hosting the international esports events in terms of money and manpower to develop the market. So will the Hong Kong SAR government learn from the Shanghai government? Well, Chair, different governments have different considerations, but we will actively consider the future of esports in Hong Kong. Mr. Michael Look. Chair, I am concerned about the ice age of the tourism industry. Despite the implementation of the 0+3 requirements, the tourism industry has not been relaunched yet. Say, for example, a 50-year-old famous travel agency. We all know which one I'm talking about. At the beginning, it said it would suspend its operation. However, it has just filed for liquidation because of indebtedness. So how many inquiries have you received from the concerned parties, and what is the amount involved? It takes me to the question that under the new regulatory regime, CAF 634F, that is the legislation on travel agency. They have to notify the travel industry authority 14 days before closure. Now, may I name the travel agency, that is Hong Tai. Has the administration reached out in advance to Hong Tai to help save their business? What are you doing to help tide them over this winter? And what about employment support and referral for the employees who are affected? Thank you. I would invite the Commissioner for Tourism to take the question. Concerning the number of concerning the inquiries received by the Travel Industry Authority, we have received some 45 calls, as said yesterday. Different types of inquiries were involved. Some were inquiring about the position of the travel agency itself, and some people asked about the refunding arrangements for money paid. So has the travel agency notified the Travel Industry Authority 14 days prior to the closure? According to the TIA, the travel agency has made the notification in accordance with the law. So when the government is aware of the crisis before the liquidation of the company, what has the government done? And are there any supporting measures to avoid similar fate for other travel agencies? How can you tie them over until the border is reopened? Chair, individual companies may close down for various reasons. As I've said in the opening remarks, we are aware that the industry has been hard hit because there were zero visitors. We have given multiple rounds of supporting measures to the industry. Although we do appreciate that these measures are insufficient. So we will do whatever we can to support them.
Mr. Andrew Lam. Now, the local culture and heritage tours, I support this initiative. But when it comes to such visits in rural areas, and the same goes for urban areas, there are constraints. Support measures and facilities. For example, you can have great natural scenery. Say in country parks under the management of the AFCD, they are in dilapidated conditions. For peers, for example, lack of transport facilities. When people take a walk, need to sit down for rest, or they need a place to have a meal, or do need somewhere to stay overnight. The licensing remains to be sorted out and rationalized. So apart from promotion and more funding, will there be more measures to help address the shortage or the lack of facilitation, support facilities and measures? Secretary, please. Now, for the heritage sites or tourist attractions, we have a scheme concerning hiking trails. We enhance the trails so that more facilities are in place and such trails are better connected with transport. Now, we will proceed with such efforts. There are many places in Hong Kong to be worked on, so we have to focus on some of the attractions first. For rural areas, we team up with the AFCD, and for heritage sites, we have to find out which organization is tasked with the maintenance of that site, and then we work with that organization. We'll continue such efforts. Now, for more details, I will invite the Commissioner for Tourism to tell us more. As the Secretary said, we're taking forward such efforts on several fronts. For hiking trails, there are 20 trails involved. We are carrying out improvement works in Pak Tam Chung. There is a green hub. We're working with the AFCD. We're looking into how to improve the transport link for that area so that both local residents and tourists will have an easier time traveling to that area. Now, turning to the wetland park, the improvement works have started. This will be completed in phases so that by the end of 2024, all the works will be completed. The Hong Kong Wetland Park remains open. Visitors can still go to the park. Next, Mr. Chen Xiu-hong. In paragraph 9, there is reference to green tourism. But why aren't we considering red tourism in Russia, Germany, France? These countries are launching tourist attractions for red tourism, bring in Chinese tourists, and they're popular with our Chinese tourists. Now, we have heritage sites in Hong Kong concerning our wall of resistance against the Japanese. We also have sites visited by communist leaders. Will the government make good use of our attractions and launch red tourism so that the teaching of history and national education can be incorporated into tourism so that we can enhance national identity? Chair. Historical incidents happened in Hong Kong, and they're reflected in different sites in Hong Kong. At history museums under the LCSD and the Coastal Defense Museum, people can see the links between our local history and our country. There are heritage sites across Hong Kong. Now, telling Hong Kong stories about the links with our country is a key area of work for us. So for the local culture and heritage tourism tour initiative, when travel agencies organize tours, we ask them to consider how to incorporate this history and heritage into the tours. Now, as to red tourism, our country has standards when it comes to what counts as red tourism. Now, we will leverage what we have here in Hong Kong in that regard. Next, Mr. Perry Yu. Chair, given a time constraint, I don't expect a detailed response, but I want to make a point here. In your opening remarks, you mentioned many measures were launched to support the tourism sector. COVID has been around for 3 years. The sector is grateful to the government for the several rounds of support. But 3 years into COVID, do these relief measures work? Should there be a review? There needs to be sustained support for the sector. Now, another well-known travel agency has closed down, and the sector is sad about this development. The government's idea is for the travel sector to do local tours and carry on. But local tours alone will not sustain the sector. Now, when can we resume cross-boundary travel? No official has given us a specific answer on this yet. Given this is the state of affairs, the travel sector needs sustained support from the government. The employment support scheme has had a major effect for both businesses and workers. But the support comes in a sporadic form that makes things difficult for the sector. So apart from the green lifestyle local tours and the cultural and heritage local tours and spend to redeem programs, what other support is available to tie the travel sector through this deep freeze so that the sector can carry on? Thank you, Secretary. For the current term government, we follow the science in fighting COVID. We are gradually relaxing some restrictions. For example, the suspension mechanisms are lifted. For inbound travelers, the quarantine requirements have been relaxed. We're now doing 0+3 instead of mandatory quarantine. These are positive steps. It's all about letting more tourists in. For green tourism and culture and heritage tourism alike, $700 to $800 million in support will be provided. And we hope this travel sector can make the most of it. We are now discussing with the travel sector what else can be done. Now, can we do tours? That is, cross-boundary travel in tours, in groups, in tour groups. We're trying to facilitate things for the travel sector. Next, Dr. Tan Yueheng. Thank you, Chair. The government's policy objective is to develop Hong Kong into a premier tourist destination. Now, what does the government mean by a premier destination for tourists? Is it a destination for the GBA? Now, Hong Kong being a core city in the GBA, apart from reviving our own tourism sector, has the government considered the tourism resources in the GBA, especially in terms of connecting, leveraging with other tourism resources in the GBA? Thank you, Chair. When we say tourism in Hong Kong, we're also facing places outside Hong Kong. On the international front, we want to bring in international visitors. We also want to bring in mainland visitors. Hong Kong is an east meets west place. So for both international visitors and mainland visitors, they get to experience what Hong Kong has to offer. The member touched on developments in the Greater Bay Area. This is why we need to develop Hong Kong into a demonstration zone for multi-destination tourism. We need to work with the cities in the GBA. For multi-destination tourism, people can visit Hong Kong and then they can travel to other mainland cities via Hong Kong. And when they return, they can return to an overseas destination through Hong Kong. This is leveraging Hong Kong's position. This can be that multi-destination tourism can apply to GBA cities or cities beyond the GBA. Each city in the GBA has its own specific tourist attractions. So when people look at Hong Kong and other GBA cities as a whole, they will see a range of options to choose from. People can choose to visit these other GBA cities via Hong Kong. That's what we mean by multi-destination tourism. Next, Ms. Eunice Yong. Thank you, Chair. For tourism policies, I see there is resolve on the government's part. As Mr. Perry Yu said, the tourism sector is in a tough spot. Election committee members of LegCo have also noted such comments. We want to see more opportunities for the tourism sector, not just for local tours, but also for tours involving the Greater Bay Area as a whole. And there's a pressing need to make things happen. Now, I want to turn to culture, especially music. In the policy address, there's reference to the Sai Kung Hoi Arts Festival and the Yim Tin Chai Festival. We need to incorporate more elements of music. We need to have different sorts of music festivals, Chinese music and Western music as well. Now, how do we emphasize our status as an East meets West center? How do we let more arts groups perform in Hong Kong? This is about a shortage of performance venues. And for the nurturing of talent, how do we get our own music groups, arts groups, or orchestras to perform in or take part in different arts festivals? Secretary, Ms. Yong raised an important point. This is more than just about tourism. This also has to do with arts and culture policies. Now, how do we help arts groups perform on different occasions? How do we give them more opportunities? Now, this is normally discussed on another panel, but since I have time, I want to invite my permanent secretary to tell us a bit about the point raised by the member. Just then, the member touched on the nurturing of talent and the shortage of performance venues. The policy address tries to tackle this problem head-on. Now, when it comes to nurturing talent, it's not just studies. We also need to provide people with opportunities to showcase their talent. We want them to be able to perform beyond Hong Kong. That's why there will be a long-term plan for performance venues. In Hong Kong, our performance venues are pretty much at capacity, so there's a need to expand the capacity. We also need to encourage the private sector to do their part to make more venues available for performers. Now, for Academy of Performing Arts, HKAPA, will be considering an expansion plan for the Northern Metropolis. This is about leveraging the advantages of the Greater Bay Area. We want to turn it into a training ground for the relevant talent. In the budget this year, in 2024, we will hold the first performance arts gala. This will be a key platform for our performance, including music performance. Artists will be able to showcase their talents before an international audience. This can be an occasion for cultural exchange This can also be an occasion for exporting our arts performances. This can also mean business. This is a way to help support our musical talents.
再縮
May I remind you to be even briefer, otherwise there will only be 15 minutes left for the next item. Dr. Wendy Hong. Thank you, Chair. Secretary, before the epidemic in year 2018, there were 65 million visitors visiting Hong Kong. Undoubtedly, the industry was thriving back then. However, there were problems created, including a bad poor experience, crowdedness, and also conflicts between Hong Kong and the mainland. So have you taken a tally on the strengths and weaknesses of our tourism industry before the epidemic, and how can we improve ourselves? Of course, we understand the importance of the tourism industry for Hong Kong, not just to the economy, but also the impact of people's livelihood. Hong Kong, after all, is a very densely populated area. In the past, we have seen conflicts in major tourism areas. Some members of the public had disputes with other visitors. So we consider it necessary to develop more tourism attractions so as to divert tourists from the more crowded areas to alleviate the impact on local residents. Say, for example, there have been a lot of visitors in the North District, affecting the livelihood of the people there. So we have encouraged the establishment of more shopping venues at other locations to draw away the tourists in the North District. So we would take on board different suggestions to improve. Mr. Edmund Wong, well, like Mr. Perry Yu said, we have had a deep winter for the tourism industry for the past 3 years. Well, during the budget debate, I have asked how the government is going to help the travel industry. We are still, at the time, we were still at the height of the epidemic, but now the epidemic is easing. So for the measures mentioned under the budget and in the policy address, when can they be implemented? The industry is desperate for help. In the budget, there are also a $60 million earmark to train up travel talents to benefit 23,000 talents. So we have to retain the talents in the travel industry. So does the Secretary have a roadmap for realizing these pledges? I would defer to the Commissioner. Thank you. On training, the Travel Industry Authority will release a press release today notifying the industry of a 3-year scheme. For travel industry practitioners who are eligible, they can apply for a funding amount with a cap of $2,000. For enrolling in courses which are related to their professional qualities. So maybe members can look forward to the press release to be issued by the TIA. Mr. Peter Shield. Thank you, Chair. Under the epidemic, visitors could not come to Hong Kong. We understand why that is, and we appreciate the Tourism Board for rolling out incentive schemes like Staycation Delights and the Spend to Redeem incentive scheme. It has benefited the retail sector. But most importantly, we need the returning of foreign visitors to help boost the general economy. I look forward to that day. I believe that day is not far ahead with the gradual relaxation of our measures. Previously, 500,000 air tickets have been made ready to attract visitors to fly to Hong Kong. So how do you plan to distribute the 500,000 air tickets, and how will you utilize them to boost our economy? Now, the last term of the government, that is the Transport and Housing Bureau, has procured the 500,000 air tickets from different airlines via the HKAA. In terms of the arrangement, the government has consulted the TIA with a view to utilize the air tickets to achieve the maximum effect to bring a new life to the airline industry and also the travel industry. But you have to wait for further announcements from the government. Thank you. I don't mind the government consulting members on this scheme. Maybe we can give you some brilliant ideas. Yes, Chair, I will convey the message to the relevant departments. Mr. Yim Kong. Thank you, Chair. Secretary, to promote the development and popularity of Chinese culture in Hong Kong, the central government has encouraged different cities as well as Hong Kong to host Chinese Culture Week and also build up the relevant hardware. So besides attracting high-end arts and culture talents, for those practitioners with lower educational level but are essential for a local culture, for example, the Sichuan tea experts, can you also put them on the talents list? Can you further study with the Labour and Welfare Bureau to streamline the requirements for these talents to work in Hong Kong? Well, in terms of promoting Hong Kong into an East-Meets-West cultural exchange center, well, we will be very actively promoting the Chinese culture. So we welcome different cultural talents from mainland cities to perform and showcase their skills in Hong Kong, and also for sharing their expertise in the arts. Well, in terms of admitting talents to become permanent residents in Hong Kong, well, we may have to consider these applications case by case. In terms of the items or the fields included on the talents list, we have to consider them one by one as well. But in terms of introducing mainland cultural talents, we do have a pathway for them. In terms of a particular kind of arts, however, we may have to consider the application individually. So that's all for this item. Thank you, Secretary and your team.
咁而家請
Now is the turn for the Transport and Logistics Bureau.
我相信大家同
I believe members have read the papers. To make good use of our time, members will not object to skipping the presentation from the Bureau Director. And let's jump right through into the Q&A. So, but we have to stop at 12:45 because we can only extend the meeting up to 12:45. Members who would like to speak, please press the button now.
係知道。局長唔好意思，因為
I beg your pardon, Secretary. We are overrunning, so I can only extend the meeting to 12:45. To save time, may I suggest we start the Q&A session right now? Mr. Michael Tian. Thank you, Chair. Now, Secretary, after the commencement of the freeway, Siu Lam and residents nearby have been complaining to us. There is a flight path right above the head. So the decibels would reach would reach some 80 when an airplane fly above them. So even with the reduced air travel, it is seriously disturbing the livelihood of the people there. Now, there are 13 noise monitoring surveillance stations. Now, the nearest surveillance station, that is Tai Lam Chung noise surveillance station, before the commencement of the free runway system, there were no when there were no flights. The decibel is under 70 or 65 decibels. Now, because the Tai Lam Chung noise surveillance station is a distance away from the free runway system, it doesn't reflect the plight faced by the Siu Lam residents. I believe you are going to install other noise surveillance stations as well. But what if the decibels level, the noise level, still exceeds the acceptable level? What will you do? Well, in this regard, may I invite Mr. Victor Liu, the Director General of Civil Aviation, to make a reply. So the new free runway system, the new runway in the north is north of the original runway. So the original runway has shifted northward. So the flight paths design has to meet the requirements of the International Civil Aviation Association to give consideration to safety. Now, Hong Kong has a very hilly terrain, and Hong Kong is a very densely populated city. Well, it is impossible to completely steer clear from the residential areas. So in designing in charting our flight path, we have considered the requirements issued by the IAA, including the orientation and the hilly terrain. Sorry, Secretary. Can you? Oh, we will not be considering changing the positioning of the runway or the flight path, even if unacceptable noise level is recorded, because I have to answer to my constituents. But we have to consider the safety of the flight paths, and also in terms of noise surveillance. Starting July, we have installed mobile monitor in Tuen Mun and Siu Lam. I was asking, what if the finding is unacceptably high? What will you do? Now we need to address the problem at source. Well, you said you cannot change the flight path. Well, we will encourage the airline to use advanced aircraft. Now, according to Chapter 16 of the Chapter 4, Section 3 of the IAA, so what if the noise level cannot be alleviated? Will you maintain the current layout? Well, we would request aircrafts to enter from the west to alleviate the noise nuisance to residents. Mr. Perry Yu. Well, I would like to ask about the training for maritime talents. To become an aviation and maritime logistics hub, we need talents for maritime insurance. In recent years, there is a serious shortage and succession problem for the industry. We see maritime insurance experts age 70 or above are still working. So about the METF, that is the Maritime and Aviation Training Fund, according to the paper, by year 2023, there will be a funding scheme to support young people who have a mind to join the industry. Well, I think this fund is very. I think maritime insurance is also relevant for this fund. So would you consider extending the fund to experts in this regard? Thank you for your question. In terms of maritime insurance, Well, the field of maritime law and maritime insurance are closely related. Well, in terms of maritime insurance, we have included the item on the talents list. On maritime law, we'll look at the issue to see whether we would include courses for maritime insurance in the scheme.
Mr. Perry Yu, the recovery of the tourism sector depends on the recovery of the aviation sector. In paragraph 3 of the paper, the government has been relaxing their COVID restrictions. There has been an increase in the passenger throughput at the airport. But up to October, we're only at 11% of the pre-COVID days. That's just 11% of what we had before COVID struck. My question for the Secretary is that do you have any further plans, other plans in terms of speeding up the recovery of the aviation industry? Perhaps incentives for more flights to be made available again for the airline carriers? Chair, in the paper, and I also made this point during a media interview, as at the end of in late September, we had the 0+3 arrangement. There's been an increase in the passenger throughput at the airport. For recovery, we need two things to happen. First, recruitment and training by airline carriers. This is about how quickly they can recruit and train up the staff. The government and the airport authority are working together to see how we can help in terms of the recruitment of the airliners. Now, when it comes to training up talent, for aviation talent, we offer programs, courses at the Hong Kong International Academy of Aviation. Training programs are available for them to pursue a career in the aviation industry. Next, Dr. Tan Yueheng. Thank you, Chair. In paragraph 12, expanding intermodal transport network, Sky Pier Terminal. In paragraph 13, sea air intermodal cargo transshipment between HKIA and other cities in the GBA. I believe these two paragraphs are significant because these measures will facilitate the flow of people and goods between Hong Kong and other parts of GBA. These two paragraphs are a good example of how to facilitate the flow of people and goods. I hope the government can take this principle and apply it to other areas in terms of integrating within the GBA. Now, for the Sky Pier Terminal, it connects to Zhuhai. Will there be plans for connection with the Shenzhen port as well in the future? Thank you, Chair. I thank Mr. Dr. Tan for his questions. Now, for maritime and aviation, at the port and airport, we are taking forward work in trying to build an airport cluster that is world-class. We follow the National 14th Five-Year Plan and the Development Plan for the Greater Bay Area. We follow the spirit of the Greater Bay Area Development Plan. We have to dovetail with our national development. We will continue to discuss with the authorities of Zhuhai and Shenzhen how we can complement the advantages of one another and bring benefits to all sides. Next, Mr. Frankie Yek. Several questions from me. In paragraph 5, the third runway. By 2024, the runway will be completed. With the third runway, we will see the consolidation of our status as an aviation hub. We have the hardware, but how do we hire the talent? How do we hire the workers to work at the airport? In paragraph 11, enhancing the aircraft leasing preferential tax regime. Now, this has to do with tax withholding on the mainland. The mainland, we were shooting for further reductions in the tax, but then the government turned it down, citing international tax arrangements. So do we have any breakthroughs in this regard? The third question in paragraph 18 has to do with the collaboration with the Zhuhai Airport. Now, there will be efforts to step up intermodal transport. The Hong Kong Airport Authority is trying to build up a high-end aviation industry cluster to be set up with Zhuhai, but there's no reference to logistics. Why? In paragraph 31, the government will discuss with the trade to come up with an action plan for the logistics industry. Two questions from the industry. For logistics, you need land to make things happen. But there is no policy support for logistics when it comes to having a piece of land for logistics. Mostly, logistics industry does its business on land on short-term tenancy, temporary land. That's making things difficult. But what happens after you have the action plan? You don't have a lot of people working on logistics in your bureau. Will you have extra manpower? What happens after the action plan is compiled? That is, how will it be implemented? Chair, we need talent, we need workers for the aviation industry. We've lost some workers over the past couple of years. We will work harder on that front. Now, when it comes to aircraft leasing, in 2017, we introduced aircraft leasing preferential tax arrangements. We can go further now as to a tax withholding arrangement. We will discuss with the central authorities. Now, can we make further reductions in the withholding of profits tax to make aircraft leasing more attractive? We'll continue to work harder on this point. Now, as for collaboration with mainland airports, we work with the Zhuhai Airport, but we also work with the Zhuhai authorities on logistics. From the western parts of Zhuhai, there is logistics business. We remain in touch with the Zhuhai authorities to look for more opportunities, things we can work on together. And fourth point, land for logistics developments in Hong Kong. In July this year, in Kwai Ching, there was an auction of a land lot. In New Town areas, in Hong Shui Kiu or Yunlong South, for example, we have dozens of hectares of land that will be used for logistics purposes. There will be multi-story buildings, industrial buildings, to facilitate the development of the logistics industry. Thank you, Chair. Next, Mr. Chen Xiu-hong. Chair, due to the time constraint, I will ask just one question. The development of a smart port. Through the development of a port community system, the government will enhance the sharing of information and in collaboration. There are examples in the mainland we can learn from. there's an Israeli company, port company. They're using a new blockchain technology for bills of lading. In the paper here, the government indicates there is a pressing need for our ports to adopt cutting-edge technology to catch up with the international community. If there's a pressing need, so is there a timetable from the government so that we know how this will happen? Chair, in terms of smart port development, we will set up a platform so that the stakeholders, such as logistics companies or liners companies, the stakeholders can make use of the platform and share information. We are already working on this. Our target is that in phase 1, so that by next year, we can leverage the port community system to work on the cold chain management so that the cargo owners, the port operators, and those downstream, such as the cargo fleet, can take advantage of the platform so that they can access information on the cold chain operations. This is the first phase of our work. And then for the remaining phases, after we learn the lessons from phase 1, we will apply the similar arrangements to the rest of the industry. Next, Mr. Eric Yim. Thank you, Chair. During COVID, the Pearl Delta port and our own China and our own port were hit by the virus. In Shekou, for example, there's a high demand on the services there for Shekou. If for someone getting a ticket and want to export something through Hong Kong airport, they have to buy the ticket 1 month in advance. Will the Secretary coordinate with the mainland authorities so to get more passenger services, that is passenger services through vessels from Shekou to Hong Kong? I thank the member for his questions. We will work on this. Now, he mentioned the service from Shekou to Hong Kong. People have to buy a ticket a long time in advance. We will work with the airport authority and the relevant mainland authorities to explore whether more lines can be offered. And we have to be mindful of the stringent COVID restrictions on the mainland. As long as COVID is kept at a manageable level, we can make things happen. Dr. Wendy Hong, be succinct, please. Chair, manpower shortage is a long-standing problem for the airport. The people have to commute across districts to go to work if they are airport workers. As we see expanded functions at the airport, we will need more workers at the airport. Will the government combine the development of an airport city and the Tung Chung Town extension to create more quality jobs for those living in Tung Chung? I thank Dr. Hong for her questions. Now, for the Tung Chung New Town extension, over the past 10 years or so, things were happening in leaps and bounds. For the Tung Chung North developments, the first residential buildings will be completed soon. In the next 2 or 3 years, the buildings will be completed. There will be a sizable increase in the population, 100,000 up to 200,000 people in terms of additional population. Along with the extension, Tongchong will be a comprehensive new town. Apart from residential blocks, there will be commercial development in the area. Just then, Dr. Hong mentioned the airport city concept. So in the airport city development, there will be hotels, catering services. The first hotel has opened this year, along with the third runway to be completed. We will see more development in the next few years, along with the extension of the Tongchong New Town. Everything will come together so as to bring benefits to the manpower arrangements for the airport. I thank the secretary and your team. It's 12:45 now. If there's no other business, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.